I'm John, this is Renee, Dash, Gavin, and Sean on the computer, and we were talking about why the U.S. elections have switched to online voting.
So a problem that has increased recently, but has also been an underlying problem for a few years now, is voter fraud. There have been 1,302 proven cases of voter fraud across the United States, according to the Heritage Foundation.
One instance of this is the 2008 Virginia state election, in which, as it says, 6.94% of the non-citizen population was enough to change the outcome of the election. And so it just shows that voter fraud isn't made up. It can have a big impact on the election, which leads us into our next example of Pennsylvania.
So voter fraud in the 2020 general election in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, over 59,000 applicants were approved and returned on the exact same day, which is literally and physically impossible with the application approval service. And over 7,500 applications were approved, returned, ballots were sent out, and ballots were returned on the same day. Again, just another extent of how impossible it could be. So here we actually have an Excel doc directly from Pennsylvania's open data. Over here you see a column just showing that any single date in these two columns will be the exact same, corresponding to each other. And there are over 59,000 instances of this. If we see here, we see the same date occurring for all four of these rows with the application approved, returned, ballot mailed, and ballot returned. And this happens 7,500 times. So, begs the obvious question, should swing states switch to some sort of online voting in order to ensure the transparency and security of elections?
Obviously, online voting is a very new idea, and so we looked at some past successes of online voting in other countries. One great example is Canada, which, as it says, had a participation rate of 16% of the population.
The second example of success in electronic voting is in South New Wales. In South New Wales, Australia, 5% of voters actually chose to vote online.
And another successful online voting system was in the United States. West Virginia teamed with counties to offer online voting for military and overseas citizens, and this voting system not only worked, but it also increased the amount of participation.
Our three claims to support online voting are that online voting would increase the voter participation, it would increase the election speed and accuracy, and it's actually very secure despite what people say the counter-argument is.
Our first claim is that online voting would cause an increase in participation. So there are multiple aspects you have to consider when voting. You have to manage your job, kids, and time. So if we were to implement an online voting system, then families wouldn't have to worry about taking time off work to fit the slim voting schedule, and they would be able to vote from home.
Professor at University of Technology, Aiken, Guido Sharon, argued that the electronic voting will increase voting rates, especially for the older, handicapped, or sick who can't go to a polling station. Oftentimes, elderly, ill, or handicapped people can't or won't go to a polling station to vote.
Now, with an increased participation of voters within our society, nations will have more speed and accuracy within our annual elections.
Our second claim is that online voting could provide speedier and more accurate results. This quote states that one significant benefit of the new system is the possibility of increasing efficiency. The problem with our current elections is that they are very slow. Speed and efficiency is very important when it comes to terms of an election. An online system would allow for quicker elections overall. McCormick believes that speedier results will boost voters' confidence in the accuracy of the outcome. The speed and accuracy of an online system would assure voters that the system is valid.
So with this supposed speed and accuracy, how reliable can the system really be?
Our third aim is actually questioning the reliability of electronic voting. Electronic voting presents a potential breach in our election and may cause an outcome that the citizens of the U.S. do not actually want.
So how do elections get hacked in the first place? Well, these are three normal ways of hacking voting machines: with physically tampering with the device, creating multiple-use electronic cards for the DRE, or remote access to voting machines. All of these can be done without any security clearance as long as you have a connection to the voting machine. Very easy.
Internet elections, like other networks, may be easy to hack. However, government sources are not like any other network.
McCormick believes that it would be very difficult to hack a government system. A large-scale attack on the government is simply unfeasible and very well may be impossible.
But an online election would be constantly upgraded and, as a product, have modern security measures and never fall behind, much like the voting machines now have.
Right here, it's an article by McCormick saying just all the things that are wrong with voter IDs, but voter IDs are actually necessary to prevent fraudulent voting. And it actually imposes little burden on legitimate voters because voters already present photo IDs for traveling in the airport and at the DMV. So voter IDs create a more legitimate election because it's less susceptible to fraud because of the security system of voter IDs. And this is bipartisan, it prevents fraud, and it gives a more fairer election and a more fair say of what the people want.
By utilizing the three claims of participation, accuracy, and reliability, a solution to the problem can be made.
Our two solutions include American Patent for Electronic Voting, and our best solution is the voting system from Estonia.
So the electronic voting system, it would be creating an electronic voting system that designates a random number or cryptographic key pair for every voter. It gives every voter some sort of random but verifiable identity. Supporting evidence, we have actual patent number 9569905, which is an apparatus for creating some sort of way of making two cryptographic key pairs that correspond with one voter identity to keep the voters to keep it from any fraudulent activity or making any fake voters. So here is actually the diagram they use for the precinct voting machine communicates with their central voting machine, which directly communicates where the neural interface is and the network interface, and will communicate what those cryptographic key pairs are and get rid of it if it's fraudulent. Various limitations. It may take a while to get a key, and as a product, it may discourage potential voters, which is exactly what we didn't want. We wanted to increase participation. The implications, it would become a much more secure and online voting system. It can be used in a global pandemic, much like coronavirus, and it will stay current and modern due to patches and updates on the software.
So our final solution that we would be following is what Estonia has implemented. They have an online voting system and have been using it since 2005. The system was quite small to begin with, only being used for local elections at first. It received a lot of criticism, but by 2011 they started to see a growth. Over 24% of the votes were cast over the internet. So there are several pieces of evidence that support Estonia's online voting system. One piece is that it increased participation. There was a survey given out, and marginal voters were more likely to vote due to the convenience of the system. And another part is that how far ahead Estonia is in their technology. So most of Estonia functions online. They're ranked number 1 out of 28 countries in e-governance. So they have like bank transactions and tax income returns and prescriptions, and all of that is they can do all that with their digital signature, which is a key component of how they are able to vote online. So the steps that we take to implement this is to first create a website with a voting application that would need to be downloaded. We would have to create a national identification card containing a digital chip, and then they have to put that into their computer. And they would also have to enter their personal identification number or PIN, and these things authenticate the voter through Estonia's population register. We then send the voter to a page that provides their candidate list, and during this they have to put in their second PIN, which serves to digitally sign a ballot, and then the ballot would be encrypted and then sent to the voting server, verifying that the signature is correct. So the vote is stored on the server until it's time to tabulate. Okay, they have a very detailed decryption process, and the whole process is transparent, and it has a third-party auditor who just oversees the whole process, and we need that. That was one of our concerns at the beginning.
As based on the evidence presented, the superior solution is the Estonian online voting system. This is because of its past success in the Estonian election, as Renee said, up to a quarter of the population chose to vote this way. It'd be a successful model to recreate, as it's already been done. And we'd be even more secure because the U.S. is more technologically advanced than Estonia. And as we liked, it increased voter participation. And all this aligns with all three of our criteria.
Changing our system to one much like Estonia's would allow for more participation, faster counting, and better accuracy, along with the fact that it would be very reliable.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, so Sean, I'm gonna start with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. So, the question I have for you is, having finished your guys' project, what, if anything, do you consider to be a gap in your team's research that if addressed would make you feel more confident? So what gap do you think that you still had, and how would you address it?
So I think a gap in our research could have been the stuff happening in our country recently, such as the questions of, is voter fraud occurring now, and how could we stop it?
Okay, good, thank you. So Renee, how are you? And I'll work over this way. Okay, I don't have to talk about it now. Okay, so, what is an example from a compelling argument of one of your peers that you decided to exclude from the team presentation, and why did you exclude it?
I think one of the good arguments was from John's. He had stuff about like illegal voters, like obviously this is about illegal votes, but also like people with voter IDs. And I guess that wasn't too much what we were focusing on. We wanted to do it more on like what we would do, like implementing like our voting system, which I think was a stronger argument.
Okay, good. Dash, how are you?
How's it going? I'm doing amazing.
Yes, we're great. We're almost finished, aren't we? So describe an argument from one of your peers' reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion.
All right. Well, I hate to use Renee's again, but actually I would agree. Even though we didn't use it, it still did kind of stick to my mind. And John's argument on like people who are in the country unlawfully would have the ability to vote, and it kind of gave us, if we wanted to, an opportunity to go into something like go into a congressional statement with, if you take a look at a more political sense, people who are Democratic would lend to give those kind of people that freedom, which would in turn help the Democratic Party. So it would create a much more biased system, and we could have implemented it, but we didn't really have the time or resources.
Gavin, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm getting better every day. So, reflecting on everybody's work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
Obviously, everyone contributed very much, but honestly, I had a lot of the claim, evidence, and information, and I feel like that impacted our solution greatly and determined which one would be the best.
Okay, good. Thank you. John, how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm well, thanks. I like your tie. It's thematically appropriate. Love it. So describe how the content of your team presentation changed as a result of the discussions that you had.
Well, originally it was more to me about how to prevent voter fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even think, from what I remember, it wasn't necessarily online voting. There was a few solutions we were thinking of, but online voting was ended up being the best solution for us to choose.